You like apples, right? You see an apple and you want to eat it. Can you stop yourself? No, that's what it's like for me. I can't stop myself from killing. Those are the words of Vladimir Mukhankin. He said them calmly, sitting across from a Russian investigator in 1995, his hand still stained from the blood of 8 people. But before we get to that room, I need to take you somewhere else first. May 1st, 1995, International Workers' Day, a public holiday across Russia. In a small city called Shakhty, in the south of the country, a 15-year-old girl named Galina Falko is running through the streets. She is screaming. She is bleeding from 2 stab wounds. Minutes earlier, she watched a man drive a bayonet knife into her mother's body. Her mother's last words, the last sound Valentina Falko ever made, were 3 words: "Run, daughter, run." So Galina ran. She ran until she found people, and through the shock and the blood loss, she told them everything: what the man looked like, how tall he was, what he was wearing, and within hours, the police had him. His name was Vladimir Mukhankin. He was 35 years old. He was 5'3", and in the 75 days before Galina Falko ran, he had murdered 8 people, 4 women, 3 girls, and 1 man, across 4 cities in Rostov Oblast. But that's not what makes this case different from any other. What makes this case different is that Mukhankin chose to become a killer. He didn't snap. He didn't lose control. He studied serial murder like a discipline. He picked a role model, Andrei Chikatilo, the most notorious serial killer in Russian history, a man who murdered 52 people in this exact same region. He read about Chikatilo obsessively in prison. He memorized Chikatilo's methods. And when he was released, he traveled to Shakhty, found the abandoned hut where Chikatilo killed his first victim in 1978, and he slept there, night after night, like a student returning to a university. Then he picked up a knife and went to work. He told the police later, "Chikatilo was a chicken. I am his student, but I have already surpassed the teacher." He was wrong. And this is the story of how a 15-year-old girl proved it. To understand Vladimir Mukhankin, you first need to understand where he came from. The city of Shakhty sits about 65 kilometers northeast of Rostov-on-Don. It's a coal mining town, founded in the early 1800s along the Grushevka River, built on the extraction of anthracite coal. For most of its history, the city lived and died by its mines. When the coal flowed, Shakhty was alive. When it didn't, it starved. By the 1990s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the mines were closing. Wages stopped being paid, sometimes for months. Workers went on strike, blocking railroads in what became known as the Rail Wars of 1998. Unemployment and poverty swallowed entire neighborhoods, and with the poverty came crime. Shakhty in the mid-1990s was a broken city. It was also the city where Andrei Chikatilo committed his first murder in 1978. But that's later. Vladimir Anatolievich Mukhankin was born on April 22, 1960, on a small farming settlement called Khutor Krasnoarmeysky in the Zernograd district of Rostov Oblast. April 22nd was Vladimir Lenin's birthday, and his mother named him accordingly. It was a name that would follow him his entire life. In school, they called him Lenin to mock him. In prison, inmates used it with a kind of dark respect. He never escaped it. His father, Anatoly, married his mother, Alexandra, when she became pregnant at 19. But Anatoly's parents disapproved. They pressured their son to leave, and he did before Vladimir was even born. He walked out, and never came back. No letters, no support, nothing. Alexandra was left alone, broke, working as a milkmaid on a collective farm. She was 19 years old, abandoned, humiliated, and according to court materials, psychological evaluations, and Mukhankin's own testimony, which investigators found credible, she turned every ounce of her rage on her son. The punishments were specific and ritualistic. She forced the boy to kneel on salt for hours. She made him stand barefoot on hot coals. She punished him physically with whatever was at hand. She deprived him of food, sometimes for days. Her partners came and went, and some of them mistreated the child, too. One of them left marks that never fully healed. Years later, criminologists would note that Mukhankin's deep resentment toward women, the resentment that would eventually shape his criminal path, was rooted here, in these years, in this kitchen, on his knees on salt, while his mother watched. At school, Mukhankin was the smallest kid in every class, short, painfully thin, undernourished. The other children targeted him easily and often. Teachers didn't intervene. They punished him instead, for things he hadn't done or things too minor to matter. He lasted 7 years before dropping out entirely. Eventually, his behavior became too disruptive for regular schooling, and he was sent to a special boarding school in the settlement of Mankovo-Kalitvensky. It was supposed to be a place for structure and discipline. According to Mukhankin, it was worse than home. He later claimed that older students at the school subjected him to serious abuse, and when he ran constantly from every institution, every home, every authority figure in his life. He didn't go to friends. He didn't go to relatives. He went to the cemetery. He slept among the graves for days, alone. A child curled up between headstones because it was quieter than anywhere else in his world. By the age of 10, the darkness that had been done to him began flowing outward. Mukhankin started harming animals, not just small ones, farm animals, pigs, horses, cows. He inflicted wounds on them deliberately and watched the consequences unfold. Investigators who later reviewed this period noted that the escalation was unusually fast and unusually severe. At 13, he committed his first crime against a person. His method was simple. Wait in a dark place. Approach from behind. One blow to the head with a cut piece of metal pipe. Take everything, money, clothing, hats, especially hats. He stole women's hats compulsively. Later, when police were hunting for the unknown attacker terrorizing Shakhty, they gave him a nickname based on this habit, Shliapnik, the Hatter. How many people he attacked in those early years is unknown. Most victims never reported it. He was also once suspected of inappropriate conduct toward a young girl, though the charge was never proven in court. By 1979, at the age of 19, Mukhankin was arrested and sentenced to 7 years for robbery, theft, and causing serious harm. He served every day. He was released in 1986, 26 years old. No skills, no education, no job. His entire adult life had been spent in a cell. And then, against all odds, he met a woman named Tatiana. On a trolley bus in Rostov, they talked, they dated. In autumn 1987, they married. On July 31st, 1988, their son Dmitry was born. It was the closest Vladimir Mukhankin ever came to a normal life. It lasted months. He was arrested again. Theft, robbery, 6 more years. Tatiana raised Dmitry alone and eventually filed for divorce. This second prison term, 1988 to 1994, changed everything, because inside, Mukhankin found Chikatilo. Andrei Chikatilo was the biggest criminal case in Soviet history. The butcher of Rostov, 52 murders, 12 years of evasion. The newspapers were saturated with the story, and the details filtered into every prison yard and cell block in the country. Mukhankin didn't just read the stories, he studied them. He memorized the geography, the forest belts, the train stations, the bus stops. He analyzed what went wrong, where Chikatilo was sloppy, where he was reckless, where he let emotions override discipline. And he noticed something critical. Chikatilo had operated in the same region where Mukhankin grew up. His first murder was in Shakhty. His hunting grounds were roads and train lines Mukhankin had walked his entire childhood. But Mukhankin didn't worship Chikatilo. He despised him. Chikatilo had been questioned by police multiple times and released because of bureaucratic incompetence. In Mukhankin's mind, that wasn't skill, that was luck, and luck runs out. Chikatilo was a chicken, he would later say. I am his student, but I have already surpassed the teacher. Chikatilo was executed by firing squad on February 14, 1994. Mukhankin was released from prison later that year. He had spent 17 of his 35 years behind bars. He had no home, no money, no family. He was officially homeless. He drifted to Shakhty. He found the hut, the one near the Grushevka River, where Chikatilo murdered his first victim, 9-year-old Galina Falko, in 1978. It was abandoned, rotting. Mukhankin entered it. He slept there, multiple nights, in the exact place where a child had been killed 16 years before. Then he acquired a half-meter bayonet knife, and he found a woman, Yelena Levchenko, who lived at 51 Kalterina Street in Shakhty. Mukhankin moved in with her. In time, Levchenko would become more than a girlfriend. She would become an accomplice. He also began brewing something. In a jar in Levchenko's kitchen, he mixed tranquilizers, sleeping pills, and cheap wine into a cocktail he called his elixir. He drank it regularly, a homemade sedative to blur the edges of what was left inside him. Everything was in place: the weapon, the base, the partner, the nerve. February 1995. Before we get to the murders, there's something you need to know. Between the killings, Mukhankin didn't sit idle. He was also committing burglaries, thefts, and muggings at a frantic pace, raiding garages, stealing chickens and ducks from yards, breaking into a school, robbing a canteen at a vocational school in Shakhty where he attacked the guard. He was a machine. In the court verdict, the judge cataloged 22 separate crimes across just 3.5 months. The murders were the peak, but everything around them was chaos too. Now, the first victim. February 15, 1995. The city of Volgodonsk, about 100 kilometers east of Shakhty. Mukhankin was visiting his half-brother, who lived in an apartment at 95 Lenin Street, apartment 24. In the apartment, a 12-year-old girl named Natasha Glukareva was watching videotapes. She was born on February 2, 1983. She had turned 12 just 13 days earlier. Mukhankin started talking to her. He offered her money, told her he'd buy her beautiful things. He convinced her to leave the apartment and wait for him outside. She did. She was 12. She trusted him. He took her to a remote area near the Semlyansk ship repair factory, and there he killed her with the bayonet knife. Afterward, he dumped her body in a ravine, throwing it into the reeds. He burned her clothing. He threw her boots into a nearby quarry. Then he left Volgodonsk and never went back. Her body wasn't found until after Mukhankin's arrest, months later. During interrogation, he led investigators to the location. In a shallow pit near the murder site, they found skeletal remains. Natasha's grandmother and mother were brought to identify the body. They recognized her from scraps of burned clothing and a single boot. That's how a family learned what happened to their 12-year-old daughter, from a piece of a charred shoe. 6 days later, the night of February 20th to 21st, Mukhankin struck in Shakhty itself. Lilia Alexeyevna Ivanishko, born 1942, was 53 years old. He attacked her with the bayonet and inflicted 17 stab wounds. 17. Long after the body had stopped moving, he kept going. He robbed her and vanished into the night. February 23rd, Defender of the Fatherland Day, a national holiday. Mukhankin committed 2 murders in a single day. The first was Sergei Ustinov, born 1960. Ustinov was the former partner of Yelena Levchenko, the woman Mukhankin was now living with. Ustinov was killed inside Levchenko's apartment at 51 Kalturina Street. Mukhankin attacked him with the bayonet. During the investigation, he would later describe this murder with chilling casualness. "I grabbed him by the scruff, threw him on the floor, hit him, stay down." And Lena was screaming, "Give it to him, give it to him." And something snapped in me. I hit him, stabbed him, 1,000,000 times maybe. Levchenko wasn't a bystander. She was screaming encouragement. And after Ustinov was dead, Mukhankin and Levchenko dismembered the body together. They carried the pieces to the banks of the Grushevka River, the same river that runs through Shakhty, the same river near Chikatilo's hut, and buried them. The same day, still February 23, Mukhankin killed again. A young woman named Shebunyaeva, a student at a local music school in Shakhty. She was murdered the same holiday. A music student who never finished her education. Her entire future ended on a national holiday celebrating the defenders of the fatherland. 4 dead in 8 days, across 2 cities, and the police still had no idea it was one person. That's because the investigation was fragmented. 2 separate police teams were working independently in Shakhty. The first team was hunting a mugger. Women kept reporting being attacked from behind, hit on the head, their hats and bags stolen. They nicknamed the unknown attacker Shliapnik, the Hatter. The second team was investigating the murders, extreme violence, a large bladed weapon, victims left with dozens of stab wounds. They called this suspect Karlik, the dwarf, based on witness descriptions of a very short man. For weeks, the 2 teams compared notes and found nothing connecting their cases. Different crimes, different methods, different targets, or so they thought. It took time before anyone looked at the physical descriptions side by side and realized the Hatter and the dwarf were the same person. Short, thin, quick, always approaching from behind. One man running 2 parallel crime sprees at the same time. On March 19, 1995, Mukhankin and Levchenko went to the home of Galina Petrovna Miroshnikova, born 1962, on Steklova Street in Shakhty. They knew her. They arrived ostensibly as guests. There was vodka, conversation. And then Mukhankin attacked. He stabbed Miroshnikova in the neck first, then the chest, then the abdomen. The court documents describe what happened next. Post-mortem mutilation that the verdict details, but that I won't repeat here. He took her gold jewelry. He gave her coat to Levchenko. But Miroshnikova was not alone. Her daughter, Yelena, born April 3, 1987, was lying on the bed, 7 years old. Mukhankin killed her to eliminate the witness. He removed the gold earrings from her ears. Then he carried her small body out of the apartment, transported it across the city to the waste dump of the Krasina mine, one of Shakhty's abandoned coal mines, and covered it with rocks and mining debris. During the crime scene reconstruction months later, Mukhankin walked investigators through this murder with the same clinical detachment he showed in everything. On camera, he pointed to the floor and said, "The murder of Galina's daughter happened here. Here I struck, on the neck, not a stab, a slash." A mother and her 7-year-old daughter, killed over vodka and gold earrings. The girl's body hidden under rubble at a dead coal mine. Shakhty erupted. The city that had barely survived Chikatilo was being hunted again. People locked their doors at dusk. Parents kept children indoors. Women refused to walk alone after dark. The markets and bus stops buzzed with one terrified rumor. There is a new Chikatilo in Shakhty. And there was something else, something the police kept from the public. Mukhankin was returning to his crime scenes. Compulsively. He couldn't stop himself. He admitted it later. "I went back to every single crime scene. Something pulled me there. I had to look." On April 4th, 1995, Mukhankin attacked Natalia Tiurina, born 1958. But this murder didn't happen in Shakhty. It happened in the nearby settlement of Kamenolomny. Tiurina was a saleswoman at a Universum grocery store. Early in the morning, she arrived to open the shop. Mukhankin followed her in. He attacked her with the bayonet, stabbing her multiple times. He robbed the store, taking vodka, alcohol, and food. Then he dragged Tiurina's body into the back room of the meat department and left her there. A woman killed at dawn in her own workplace. Her body left in a storage room behind the counter where she sold groceries to her neighbors. Between the confirmed murders, Mukhankin committed at least 4 attempted killings that failed. The most significant was the attack on 13-year-old Yelena Vinogradova on April 16, 1995, in Shakhty. Mukhankin approached her from behind and stabbed her in the lower back with the bayonet. She fell. She lost consciousness. But then she came to, and she kicked him. She kicked him hard enough to create space, and she ran to where people were. Mukhankin fled. A 13-year-old girl, stabbed in the back, unconscious. She kicked him and ran. Yelena Vinogradova lived. Her description would later help investigators build the composite profile that linked all the attacks together. That same evening, the evening of April 16th, Mukhankin broke into a cooperative garage on Kulibin Street in Shakhty and stole a bicycle, a car stereo, a radio receiver, 2 electric drills, 2 sacks of potatoes, and 10 live chickens. Total estimated value, over 2 million rubles. This is who he was, a man who murdered a woman at dawn and stole chickens by nightfall. Then came May 1st, 1995. In the city of Salsk, 180 kilometers southeast of Shakhty, the morning began at the train station. Yelena Vitayevna Stefan, born 1968, was 27 years old. She worked as a cargo handler at Salsk railway station. That morning she was near the siding tracks close to the city's grain elevator. Mukhankin, drunk, found her there. He attacked her with the bayonet, stabbing her in the chest, the abdomen, everywhere. He robbed her of her belongings. Then he dismembered her body and hid the remains along the tracks. A 27-year-old railroad worker, killed on her way to work, on a holiday. Later that same day, Mukhankin made his way back toward Shakhty, and he attacked for the last time. Valentina Ivanovna Falko, born 1956, was walking home from a cemetery with her 15-year-old daughter, Galina. They had been visiting a family grave. Mukhankin came at them from behind. He attacked Valentina first. Then he turned on Galina, stabbing her twice with the bayonet. Valentina Falko, bleeding, dying, used her last breath to scream, "Run, daughter!" And Galina, 15 years old, 2 knife wounds in her body, ran. Mukhankin hesitated. He started after the girl, then stopped. He turned back. He finished killing Valentina. By the time he looked up, Galina was gone. Galina Falko ran until she found people, bleeding from 2 stab wounds, in shock, 15 years old, but coherent, precise. She described the attacker down to the details that matter: height, build, face, clothes. The police came fast. The pattern had been building for months. Overlapping descriptions from the Hatter muggings and the dwarf killings had already merged into a single suspect profile. Galina's testimony locked it in place. Vladimir Mukhankin was identified, located, and arrested the same day. May 1st, 1995, 75 days after his first murder. When they searched him, they found the bayonet knife, forensically matched to every single victim, and they found a handwritten list. 40 names, all police officers, investigators, detectives, patrolmen, officers who had been involved in his previous arrests, his previous prison sentences. It was a kill list. Mukhankin had told associates that after the women, he planned to find and destroy every police officer connected to his past convictions. Had Galina Falko not run, the next phase would have been targeted assassinations against law enforcement. The women and girls were just the warm-up. In custody, Mukhankin didn't break. He didn't go silent. He talked, eagerly, proudly. He told interrogators he was Chikatilo's student. He described every murder with mechanical precision, locations, sequences, the exact angle of each stab. He drew maps. He walked investigators through crime scenes on camera, pointing and narrating like a tour guide through a museum of his own creation. When they asked him why, he used the analogy that opens this documentary. You like apples, right? You see one and you want to eat it. Can you stop yourself? Same thing for me. I can't stop myself from killing. He described what he did with the bodies of his victims in terms that disturbed even veteran homicide investigators. The court psychiatric evaluation documented what it called an unhealthy passion for internal organs. He mutilated bodies, both dying and dead. He removed organs. He brought them back to Levchenko's apartment. He slept with them. He described the organs as if they were living things, something that demanded attention, interaction. Then, without warning, he changed strategy. He recanted everything. Suddenly the murders were committed by Vasya, a phantom accomplice Mukhankin refused to identify, citing thieves' traditions that forbade naming associates. When pressed, he couldn't provide a single verifiable detail about Vasya. The investigators didn't waste time on it. There was no Vasya. There never had been. Next, he tried to shift blame to Levchenko. She was arrested and questioned. The investigation confirmed her involvement in the Ustinov murder. She helped dismember and bury the body, and she was present during the Miroshnikova attack. She also participated in at least one burglary, helping transport stolen vodka and merchandise from a private store to her apartment by bicycle. But her criminal proceedings were eventually suspended due to illness. She was never tried alongside Mukhankin. Finally, Mukhankin deployed his last defense, insanity. He began acting erratically during interrogations, bizarre statements, changed behavior. Forensic psychiatrists examined him over multiple sessions, conducting a full forensic evaluation. Their conclusion was unambiguous: psychopathy, but fully sane, fully aware, fully responsible. Every murder was a conscious choice, every single one. The trial opened in the Rostov Regional Court. State Prosecutor K.V. Kalyuzhin. Mukhankin treated the courtroom like a stage. He interrupted the judge. He made speeches about how he was superior to Chikatilo. He mocked the proceedings. Extra security had to be brought in because the regular detail couldn't contain him. He pled partially guilty, admitting to some robberies, denying most of the murders. The Vasya defense collapsed instantly under cross-examination. The knife matched every wound. The surviving witnesses identified him without hesitation. Galina Falko, still bearing the physical injuries from May 1st, took the stand and testified. On December 11, 1996, the verdict came. Guilty on 22 charges, 8 murders, 4 women, 3 girls, 1 man. The youngest, 7-year-old Yelena Miroshnikova. 4 attempted murders, including the stabbing of 15-year-old Galina Falko and 13-year-old Yelena Vinogradova. Robberies, thefts, burglaries, assaults. The sentence, death by firing squad, full confiscation of property. Mukhankin's reaction was almost serene, no protest, no plea, as if the death sentence confirmed what he had always believed, that he operated on a level that demanded the state's maximum response. But the state had other plans. Russia was negotiating membership in the Council of Europe, which required suspending the death penalty. A moratorium on executions was introduced. By 1999, President Yeltsin commuted every pending death sentence to life imprisonment. Mukhankin was transferred to Black Dolphin prison, IK6, in Soliletsk, Orenburg Oblast, Russia's most feared penal colony. Black Dolphin holds approximately 700 inmates, all lifers, all convicted of the most extreme crimes committed on Russian soil: serial killers, terrorists, cannibals. The facility is named after a dolphin sculpture at the entrance, carved by inmates, one of the only creative acts permitted inside those walls. The regime is designed to erase you. Cells are 3 by 4 meters, 2 inmates per cell, matched by prison psychologists to minimize violence. Cameras run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When inmates are moved through corridors, they walk bent forward at the waist, arms behind their backs, eyes blindfolded. Guards maintain physical contact at all times, and every time an inmate addresses a staff member, every single time, he must state his name, his criminal article, and the number of people he killed. Name, article, kill count. That is how you greet a guard at Black Dolphin. During the day, inmates are forbidden from sitting or lying on their bunks. The table and chairs in the cell can only be used during meals. The rest of the time, you stand, or you pace, in a cell smaller than a parking space. Former members of the Presidential Human Rights Council who inspected the facility compared the daily regime to training, the systematic conditioning of human beings into submission. There is no possibility of parole for 25 years. After that, the odds are virtually zero. Black Dolphin is where the Russian state sends people it never wants to see again. While Mukhankin sat in this place, word came from outside. His son, Dmitry, the boy born July 31st, 1988, during the only period of Mukhankin's life that resembled anything human,
had drowned in the Kuban River. 1997. He was 9 years old. Those who have written about Mukhankin's case say this was the only time in over 3 decades of imprisonment that he showed genuine emotion. Not for any victim, not for any family he destroyed, not at sentencing, only for Dmitri. In the silence of Black Dolphin, Vladimir Mukhankin began to write. Over more than 2 decades, he filled 18 notebooks, memoirs, philosophy, poetry. He wrote about his childhood, about Alexandra, about the salt and the coals, about what he did and why. His notebooks were examined on the Russian television show Battle of Psychics. His case was documented in at least 3 books. Maniacs, Blind Death, by Nikolai Modestov, published in 1997. Serial Killer, A Portrait in the Interior, by Luxemburg and Yandieva, 2001. And Vladimir Mukhankin, Alien to the Core, by Dmitry Popov, 2010. In 2002, he gave a television interview to the Russian channel Rossiya, where he spoke about his crimes with the same detached precision he had shown during interrogation 7 years earlier. In 2006, the newspaper Argumenty I Fakti published a letter he sent from his cell. The headline read, "Vladimir Mukhankin, I feel good in the death row cell." But the bravado has cracks. In 2007, he told interviewers he was comfortable. By 2009, he was complaining about the conditions and stating he would have preferred execution. He has said more than once that a bullet would have been mercy, that life in Black Dolphin is worse than death. He has filed numerous legal complaints, including, in one almost absurd petition, a formal demand for the return of a tape recorder that police confiscated at his arrest in 1995. And he writes poetry. In one poem, he put it this way: "I'm not Pushkin. I'm not Yesenin. I never reached those heights. I'm just a con called Lenin who understood a lot of things." He left poems near some of his victims' bodies, scraps of handwritten verse beside the dead, as if the murders needed a signature. As of 2026, Vladimir Mukhankin is 65 years old. He has been incarcerated continuously for over 30 years. He is classified as a pensioner within the Russian penal system and is exempt from mandatory labor. He still occupies a cell in Black Dolphin. He will die there. And there is a symmetry to this story that almost feels written. He committed his murders in the same city where Chikatilo began. He used the same hunting ground. He visited Chikatilo's crime scene and slept there like a disciple at a shrine. He declared himself the successor. The next chapter, the evolution, but the comparison falls apart completely. Chikatilo evaded one of the largest criminal investigations in Soviet history for 12 years. He killed 52 people across 3 Soviet republics. He was questioned by police and released multiple times because the system couldn't fathom that an ordinary-looking man could be responsible. Mukhankin lasted 75 days. He killed 8 people in one oblast, and he was caught because a 15-year-old girl with 2 knife wounds in her body and her murdered mother lying behind her ran through the streets and told the police exactly what he looked like. The man who called Chikatilo a chicken was stopped by the one thing he never planned for, someone who refused to die. Here is what he left behind. Natasha Glukareva, 12 years old, lured from an apartment with the promise of money. Her remains identified months later by a single burned boot. Lilia Ivanishko, 53, 17 stab wounds. Sergei Ustinov, 35, dismembered by a man and a woman and buried by a river. Shebunyaeva, a music school student, killed on a national holiday. She never graduated. Galina Miroshnikova, 33, killed over vodka in her own home. Yelena Miroshnikova, 7, murdered in her mother's apartment, buried under rocks at a dead coal mine, her gold earrings stolen from her ears. Natalia Tiurina, 37, killed at dawn in the store she worked at, her body hidden in the back room of the meat department. Yelena Stefan, 27, a railroad worker, stabbed near the siding tracks at Salsk Station, dismembered. Valentina Falko, 39. Her last act on earth was not to fight. It was to save her daughter. Her last words, "Run, daughter." Galina Falko survived. She was 15. She carries 2 scars and a memory that will never fade. Vladimir Mukhankin wanted to be remembered as the man who surpassed Chikatilo. Instead, he will be remembered as the man who was stopped by a girl who listened to her mother. He is alive today. He is in Black Dolphin, and the silence he lives in now is the only thing he ever truly earned.